Hello Sagittarius friends, I'm Annie Botticelli and welcome to my video, June 2020 Astrology, Sagittarius Must Knows. In this video, I want to equip you to understand the many different astrological factors that are at play here and specifically how those might influence people with Sagittarius placements. I'm a Sagittarius also, and I have a lot of placements in Sagittarius, so every time I do the Sag reading, I have a lot, even more deeper understanding about how these energies tend to manifest because of my personal experience. So we're going to do a little overview of the highlights of the month. We've got 2 eclipses, including the beginning of the eclipse cycle of Sagittarius and Gemini. This is huge for Sagittarius. We're going to talk about that. It's also one of the other eclipses that are in the 3 eclipse cycle, which is going to be a Cancer eclipse, and that's going to hit at a tough angle for Sagittarius. So we need to know about that and understand what's going on there. And then, of course, we have a 3rd eclipse in July, which I'll be talking about more in July. We've got Venus still retrograde, but going direct at the end of the month. Venus rules love, beauty, and money. So if you've been having your focus on love and design projects and money and anything, relationships, then I'm not surprised because Venus brings those things into prominence. However, for Sagittarius, this relationship with the aspect that it's making is actually quite positive. So I'm hoping that that manifests as very sweet things in the Venus retrograde for us because it's in Gemini and that's in a language that we understand. It is in opposition to our placement, but it's still a language that we can understand. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Mercury retrograde, and that's also in Cancer, which is also at a weird angle for us like that solar eclipse. So we've got a lot of things to discuss. So the other thing that I want to go over just before we go into these details is that this energy of this month is covered in retrograde, okay? Venus, Mercury retrograde, also Sagittarian ruler Jupiter went retrograde in May and will not be going direct until September 13th. So for Sagittarius, there's a little bit of extra retrograde energy because even though everyone's experiencing Jupiter retrograde, it's our ruler. And when your ruler goes retrograde, you really feel that. So we're going to talk about that as well. But just know that, basically put yay, like go in your calendar and put yay on September 13th because like the expansion, I guess we're going to talk about it right now. It seems like that's how it's flowing. So Jupiter rules benevolence. It's called the Great Benefic. And if you haven't watched my video called How the Astrology of 2020 Explains the Coronavirus and the Systems Breaking Down, I highly recommend you search for Annie Botticelli Coronavirus because it's a very long, insightful piece on understanding the bigger things that are at play. But in that video, I mentioned about how the astronomy and the astrology blend together and that a lot of the understandings that we have astrologically come from ancient people understanding the astronomy in ways that it's taken us a long time to refigure out. And one of those things that people in the ancient world knew about Jupiter when they named him the Great Benefic is that there's a protection element that Jupiter has being so big because there are all these like asteroids and comets and just things coming from the Kuiper belt out beyond the outer planets. And when they are coming in towards the sun, they could be slamming us, and they have, before, but we're protected by Jupiter because it has so much density that those things are attracted into the gravitational pull of Jupiter. So not only is Jupiter the energy of our ruler, called the Great Protector, it's not random. It's like astronomically, Jupiter, the planet, protects our planet from getting pelted mercilessly from flying star stuff. So it's really important to understand those, those correlations between the astronomy and the mythology and the astrology. And so thinking of this now in terms of retrograde, the positivity, the enthusiasm that Sagittarius are known for, the ebullience, the, just bubbling over, the flow and the extra, prolific expression that we tend to have, right? All of that is a normal manifestation of people ruled by Jupiter. And when it goes in retrograde, that kind of turns around. So a couple of things that can happen here. One thing is it can seem like things that were working for you are going backwards and maybe not going to work for you. But before you make any conclusions about what that's going to mean, wait until September, because a lot of the things that may seem to be getting undone at that time during the retrograde could have just been working towards making things even better for you. And so before you think that something is done forever that had steam, it's possible that when Jupiter goes direct again, that you might see it, start to roll out again. That's the first thing to know. The second thing is, if you notice that you're a little bit more blue, like, blues, like you're not happy or you're a little bit lower, you might have to do more to boost your serotonin, because the energy of Jupiter just seems to be a natural serotonin builder, booster. That's part of why, Sagittarius are going around and they're like, yay, I'm happy, regardless of what's going on, I still keep my happy. So you might have to do a little more to keep your serotonin levels higher, and you can do a search for natural ways to boost your serotonin. Of course, if there's a medical necessity and you have to go that way, then you have to see practitioners about that. But just for common, normal, everyday, just kind of not feeling a little off, just look for ways to boost your serotonin. Get out there, exercise, use your long Sagittarian legs. A lot of Sagittarius have these long legs that are made for walking. So those are some other things that you can do. And you might notice that you're a little bit lazy with your expression, which might make you feel a little depressed, because a lot of times Sagittarius feel like really excited about the things that they're creating and sharing, and that they're inspired. And sometimes when Jupiter goes retrograde, they're not as inspired. And then they think, oh my God, what's wrong? Who am I? And then that can create its own type of, sadness, because you're confused and you don't understand, because you're not looking at Jupiter being retrograde. So if you notice, like in May and June and July and August into the beginning of September, if you're like, wow, I'm really uninspired, I'm really uninterested in things that I was interested in, don't worry about it, because probably your zest and your vim and vigor for these things and maybe other things will return. So again, like if you're starting to study something and you become uninterested in it, don't necessarily withdraw, because you may, or withdraw because you may find it coming back. Like things like that, will tend to cycle back around. So what that makes Jupiter retrograde really great for is a rest, and usually I'd say go travel, because that's the other thing that Sagittarius like to do, right? But I don't know the state of quarantine and the state of traveling, what it's going to be for the whole rest of time. Hopefully things will be safe for people to start coming out again, and we'll have extra travel energy and extra travel opportunities that will come from having been quarantined for so long. I'm hoping that happens, but I just really don't know, and it depends. Different people are going to have different experiences. So it's also a very good time to be internal and get some stuff done that you were not able to get done because you're out doing all of these crazy Sagittarius things all the time, where you're like busy and doing this and doing that and doing this. And then in the meantime, you have like this pile of stuff that you're trying to do at your house, or these things, there are a lot of factors that are bringing the energies of Sagittarius into the home space, into the home and family space, into the emotional space. So you might be, if you are inspired, a lot of times things from the past might come back with all this retrograde. Mercury, Venus, Jupiter might come back for you to breathe life back into, and you're more interested in finishing old, unfinished business or wrapping up old things than you might be for new things. That's also a way that it can manifest, and that's a really great way to use the energies and to really just straighten things up in your life, clear out clutter, do anything that, and this is like all from the perspective of all the retrogrades, because this month is just so retrograde-y, it's crazy. So the way that I like to describe what's happening this month is like the analogy I'm using has to do with people when they're learning to crochet or knit. If you go to make a scarf, instead of it looking like a scarf, if you miss a stitch, one of the ends start going on an angle. I mean, you have one straight end and then you're missing stitches and then it's getting more narrow, and then you're like, uh-oh, what's happening to my scarf, right? So the retrogrades tend to encourage you, inspire you to unstitch back to where the mistake was made so that you can have a straight scarf. And sometimes it forces the unstitching for you. So if you notice things are unstitching, unhinging, ungluing at this time, put on some classical music that relaxes you, but it always makes me think of, the energy of happiness in the midst of madness, of happiness and joy and upbeat energy in the midst of everything is falling apart and you can't control it. So you may as well be happy and dance about it, So it's like some of the things that unhinge might also be a matrix that you're no longer wanting to be in. It can be karma that you're like done with. That can be what unglues and unstitches and unhinges. And then you have the chance to stitch things back and stay on the straight and narrow and be able to clear up and remedy a lot of things in your life. Okay, so let's just look at some dates here and then we'll look at the charts. So June 2nd, the Mercury shadow period starts, and then June 17th or 18th, depending on what time zone, the actual retrograde will begin. And that will be in Cancer. That's a tough angle for Sagittarius. We're going to look at that with the charts. But I just wanted to show you that visual just so you can see, like, the whole month is covered in retrograde, because the shadow period before the actual retrograde and then the shadow period that extends after the retrograde, so it goes direct July 12th and then through July 26th is like the post-shadow period. So essentially from June 2nd through July 26th, we have this Mercury retrograde focus that is going to bring things home and family, emotion, like that's going to come up, and we'll look at that. But the beginning of the month also has it. It's like a pot that's boiling. You turn the heat on June 2nd, and every day there's more bubbles in the pot making its way up to the boil of the retrograde. Okay, so you can understand it that way. June 5th is the lunar eclipse, full moon lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. We're going to talk about which Saggies are likely to feel that more than the others, and why. And we'll talk more about what this eclipse cycle will bring, but just those are important dates to note. And also know, if you love to know these dates and kind of get your bearings straight about what dicey things and sweet things may be happening, definitely sign up for my free email newsletter at anniehelpsyou.com. All my links are also in the notes underneath the video when you click on more underneath the video, because in my monthly write-up that I do for my email newsletter group, I send it out a month early. I write a little description about what the energies are like, what to expect, some tips, and then I go through every aspect that's happening that month and describe what the aspect is, what the planets are, what the signs are, and what you can expect from that type of energy so that you can kind of track it. So if things are a little bit off, you can be like, oh, right, what did that newsletter say? Okay, this is happening on this day. That could come with this, okay? And then there's sweet days. Just happens to be that in June, there are way more difficult aspects than there are sweet ones. And whenever that happens, we can expect road bumps and blocks to things that we're trying to do. So just kind of be on the lookout for that, and just remember that this month is not about pushing or forcing agendas, because that is the antithesis of retrograde. If you're trying to do something and it's not happening, unless you have some very deep, certain spiritual certainty that you have to do this certain thing, there's a chance that you might not have to do that certain thing, and that it might be better to just take your hands off the wheel and just be like, okay, I'm not doing that certain thing. There's going to be a ton of aspects in Gemini which, interfere with movement and mobility, which of course we're already having with quarantine, but who knows, hopefully some people will be off of quarantine by then, and you do have to be aware of these other aspects that could impede movement. June 20th through 21st, the new moon solar eclipse is at 0 degrees of Cancer. Again, that's a tough angle for Saggies, so we're going to talk about that. June 24th through 25th, Venus is direct. Okay, so that has been retrograde, 14 degrees back to 5 degrees in Gemini, as I alluded to earlier in this video. That's been at a sweet yet overstimulating angle for Saggies, so I'm hoping that manifests some positive things for us. Then the shadow period after Venus goes direct lasts through July 29th. So the ruler of love, beauty, money, bringing up the things from the past and uncertainty and indecision and things like that, you might see that loom until the end of July. And the end of July is going to be some of the best striking distance for doing things until the very end of the year, really, because we're going to have another Mercury retrograde. We're going to start Mars shadow period of the retrograde at the end of July, but it's going to be very early in it. So if you do have something that has to bubble through or bubble up at that end of July, you might have some more clarity and energy towards it. June 30th is the second of three Jupiter-Pluto connections. And this is really big in the scheme of what's happening with the coronavirus. Definitely search for Annie Botticelli coronavirus and watch the video on that, because it's very, very detailed and will help you understand how these astrological factors are involved with the breakdown of the systems, and that it's not actually the coronavirus causing the financial market problems. It's the astrology that's restructuring the systems, and the coronavirus is a messenger of that and part of the process. So the beginning of April, we had that first conjunction, and then the end of June, we're having the second one, and then in November, we're having the third one. So there's some sort of storyline that's being followed here that will probably bring a lot of intensity. And for a lot of you Sages, that's actually going to be in a money house. So it is possible that that could mean some major money things for Sages. So we'll also look at that. All right, so now let's get the charts out here. And many of the things I talk about will be true for early, middle, and late degree Saggies. But there are going to be times when I differentiate and say those of you earlier in the sign, or those of you in the middle sign, or those of you at the end of the sign, and I want you to know where you're at. So early degree Sagittarius are basically November born, or 0 to 9 degrees if you know what your degree is. If you don't, you can run a free birth chart, which I always recommend, so you can get deeper into the work, even with, especially just with my work, because I always talk about these degrees and you'll be able to go deeper. Middle degree Sages are basically December 1st through 10th, or 10 to 19 degrees, and late Sag, which is where I am with you all, December 11th, the rest of the sign, or 20 to 29 degrees. You can just refer back to that if you need a little refresher. Okay, so I'm going to use, let's look at the middle degree chart. Even though we're going to be talking about things for everybody unless I differentiate out. So it doesn't really matter what chart we're using. That's why I'm crossing that out there. Okay, the first thing I want to show you is all this energy in Gemini. Look at that. It's highlighting the relationship sector. Okay, so the early degree chart, you can see that 7th house is there. It's full. The middle degree chart, 7th house is full. And late degree chart, 7th house is full. So it doesn't matter whose chart we're looking at for Saggies. Relationships are coming front and center. I mentioned that before as far as home and family, but the sector of relationships and how you relate to other people, those are the kind of things in focus. So if this Gemini energy can't bring travel like it usually does for a lot of Saggies, I don't know about you all, but I plan trips during that time because I know I'm going to be antsy like crazy, because this makes these opposing energies. It makes us feel overstimulated. It fuels our fire for the things that we want to do. We want to write, we want to speak, we want to teach, we want to learn, we want to travel, we want to be involved in different countries and languages and cultures, and get involved in spiritual things and help people. And that's all of our Sag energy, and Gemini energy just breathes life into that. So sometimes we can get overstimulated, but this is a really great time for all of those things, whatever we can do, studying from home, So again, I'm hoping that all this Gemini energy brings a chance for us to safely be out and about more as we like to do. But in the event that it's not manifesting that way, there's still all of these other ways that I mentioned that it could manifest. And really what Spirit wants for Sagittarius at this time is to be hyper-focused on our relationships, hyper-focused on our relationship to relationship, our home space, our families. And a lot of things are going to come to us in those arenas that are out of our control, that are just how things are happening, and some of it might be our own onus to work with those things. So really getting in touch with your inner world, and with checking in with your relationships, and really just kind of feeding them and feeding the time and effort into your inner life, your inner patterns, and healing yourself, so that you can use these retrograde energies, because they're going to bring things back from the past for better and worse. Okay, so let's see what else. Mercury is going to be in retrograde. We talked about that. And that is at a challenging angle for us. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You might notice every year when the planets start to get into Cancer, that those energies are not as great. We don't love them as much for the way that Sagittarius energy moves, okay? As I've spoken about before, Sagittarius energy moves in a spiral, and it's an upward spiral. And then Cancer energy moves in a line, okay? It's a cardinal sign, and it basically moves, let's do this in red, down and back, okay? So while we're like, woo, 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 we're trying to spiral, trying to go up, Cancer energy comes, pulls down and pulls back, and we're like, hey, I'm trying to go around and up, and you're pulling me down and back. And just remember those visuals. Like, the more you understand the energy of what makes a sign, how energy moves through a sign, the more you can understand why, when the planets are in certain signs, why it interacts with us in a certain way. Now, Gemini energy is also this upward spiral. So we're like, woo, 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 woo. And then the Gemini comes in, we're like, woo, woo, woo. We're like a top smashing into stuff, So It can be very, very overstimulating. But this Cancer energy, when it comes in, it puts water on our fire. And sometimes we don't want that water on our fire, right? We want to be fiery. So with the Mercury in retrograde, at this angle that is not as easy or natural, we'll say it, is going to come, and it's going to be from 14 degrees back to 5 degrees. Okay, so that means that everybody from around, let's see, November 26th, 27th, through about December 4th, 5th, 6th, around there, like you all in that group, you're going to have the retrograde actually hit your Sag placements. So the news, the things from the past, the things to work with might have a little bit more of a challenging tilt, but don't let that scare you. My purpose in telling you these things is not to scare you, because it's like preparing for rain. Okay, this is how I always explain it. If you know that it's going to rain, and somebody says it's going to rain, and then you bring your rubber ducky, you bring your, your boots, your rain boots, you have your umbrella and your rain jacket, then you can go and prance and play with your ducky in the rain. Okay, it's raining, but you were ready for it. But if you don't know that it's going to rain, and you go to the beach or wherever you're going, and you don't have anything ready, and then it pours and it like rains on your parade, then you're like, damn it, I don't like that. But if you're prepared for it, then you know heavy emotion's going to come, for better and worse. That's what's going to happen. Water brings that. Solar eclipse and Mercury retrograde in there, and then the sun moving into Cancer at the end of the month, that's going to bring emotion. And if you notice, every year around this time, you get super family focused, you get super internal emotions, other people's emotions, your own emotions, emotional things happening, things that your house need help, things in your family need help or attention. And sometimes it's just like nice, cozy family time through, just togetherness shared, and that it's not a problem. But it's like, it's not spinning, it's going down, grounding into the family, grounding back into the memories, working on photo projects, things like that is that type of energy. Okay, so let's talk about this Sag eclipse. Now, know that I go into way more detail about this eclipse and where it hits for Sagittarius in the May report. So make sure to listen to that, because I'm not going to go into the same level of detail here because I've already covered it there. But in that report, I tell you exactly where, what house, what field of experience for each of the Sag placements is going to hit. And then that refers you to more videos that I've made that gives you lots of details about how I've seen that eclipse manifest. But we're going to look at the Sagittarius eclipse now from the perspective of the sign of the eclipse, not the house of the eclipse, and the new pattern that's forming. So the pattern that's starting is the Sag-Gemini eclipse cycle that begins now and goes all the way through 2021. Through December of 2021. So that will have like a little carryover into energetically into the beginning of 2022. And this is going to bring a lot of changes for Sagittarius, a lot of changes to the relationship sectors. And you're already probably seeing this coming. Things could have been happening in April, May, because before the eclipses, even 8 weeks or so before the eclipses, a lot of times big news will start to come in that are eclipse related. Relationships changing, ending, beginning, deeper levels, different levels. And that's what's going to be a huge focus, is you versus your relationships, you in your relationships, you feeding your relationships, them feeding you, healing codependency, creating interdependency, and, and transcendence above dysfunctional patterns. And that's going to be a major storyline that goes on for Sagittarius over the next couple of years. And at the same time, this topic of distance learning, distance education, distance work is being brought to everybody from this, but it's taking on a special importance for Sagittarius. Sagittarius tend to be teachers, even whether they realize it or not. A lot of times Saggies, people, the more Sagittarius, Sag you have in your chart, the more this is true, where even if you're not a teacher, your aspect of work that you like the most is when you get to help other people, when you get to educate other people, so even if it's informal, it's part of how you are. And so the way that education is going to be, is changing a lot because of what's happened with the coronavirus and the breakdown of the systems. So there's going to be a particular topic about how you can get your business, not geographically linked, or how you can add more of this international energy through through international business that takes place through devices, which may or may not involve travel. And writing, of course. Sagittarius love writing and, teaching, publishing, blogs, books, things like that. Those are going to come up in a big way. So those of you who are, so we talked about that the Mercury retrograde was from 14 degrees back to 5 degrees. So those of you in that 14-degree block, so actually we're going to say for this eclipse, 9 degrees through 19 degrees, with the closer to 15 degrees, the more powerful. And the way that this translates is about December 5th and the days around that will get hit the most powerfully with this eclipse. And then all of the first December 1st through 10th or so, or November 31st, or the end of November days basically, are going to factor in more for the effects of this eclipse. I was just having a block on how many days were in November. I have to sing the song in my head. Anyway, so those are the people who are going to feel this the most. But remember, I told you it's important to know what other planets you might have in Sagittarius, because if your sun sign or your rising sign or your moon sign is in Sag, but you have other placements in Sag, you might be in some of these degrees and having one of your planets hit in a more powerful way, and you wouldn't even know it because you don't know you have those planets. That's why I want to encourage you to run a free birth chart online, look for this symbol, Sagittarius, see how many planets have this Sagittarius symbol, and then you can look at the degrees. So see here, if this were a chart you were looking at for yourself, that's 9 degrees, that's 20 degrees. So then you can see what the degree placement is. And then you can use my work in deeper ways. Okay, so big life-changing crossroads, new chapters happening for Sagittarius, and major endings as well. All right, so what else did we talk about? Okay, so we talked about, Gemini. All right, let's talk about this Venus retrograde. Venus retro from 21 degrees back to 5 degrees is going to be affecting. So you can see a lot of you in that range, you're getting hit with these things more for these aspects, for better and worse. So again, November 27th, but this time we're going to run it through, so that's the 16th, 17th. You all are having Venus retrograde all over your placements. Okay, so expect more news about love and self-esteem and money and things coming back from the past. And these could be good things, life can be breathed back into your relationship. A love from the past can come back. Money from the past can come back. Past clients, if you have to do something for business or work, a lot of times the things having to do with making money from the past or clients from the past, things that you did in the past might be successful. If you're needing work or needing extra money because of things going on, you can go back to your past clients and they're going to likely give you sustenance more than new efforts, unless the new effort is a short-term thing that you're working on, which could also happen. Okay, so that Jupiter-Pluto conjunction that we talked about, that's the early degree chart, that's the middle degree chart, and that's the late degree chart. So even for the late degree placements where it might nudge into your first house, the energy of money and the second house is going to be very much brought up for Sagittarius for that placement. So that was the one I talked about where it happened in the beginning of April, it happened at the end of June, and it's going to happen again in November. It happened in 2008. So notable money things, for better and worse. So it's going to test sustainability for the world. As you can see, it's happening. But specifically for Sagittarius, because it's hitting in the money house, look out for very important, possibly life-changing developments along the financial front, okay? So we're going to talk about that. Okay, so now part of our work, my self-appointed work for this June report, since we talked about where the eclipse of June 5th was going to hit in the May report, this June 20th, 21st, 0-degree Cancer eclipse, we're going to see where in here this hits for you all. Okay, so let's just have the reminder, the early Sag November born, 0 to 9 degrees, the middle Sag, December 1st through 10th, 10 to 19 degrees, and late Sag, December 11th through the rest of the sign, or 20 to 29 degrees, so that we can look where this is going to hit. Okay, so since it's so early, it's the 0 degree, it's the first degree of Cancer. Those of you that have, like in the first couple of degrees, we'll even just say the 5 to 7 degrees, most of the early degree placements, most November born, the ones not towards the end of November, but like up till the 27th or so, you all can have this energy in the 8th house, okay? But with every day that we move deeper into the sign, it's really bringing that 0 degree energy back into the 7th house, which is where the middle and late degree placements are going to feel that for sure, and some of the early. Okay, now what's the same about these manifestations is that they're all partnership houses. I mean, they're both, you know, the 8th house and the 7th house are both partnership houses. So remember I talked about before, not only is the 7th house of relationships full from all those Gemini things, we looked at that, but the eclipse is actually going to happen. So the eclipse is in the sign of home and family and housing and real estate and home-based projects and things like that. But it's in the house of relationships, either way, 7th or 8th. So early, middle, and late, you're going to see that 7th house, and then early you might also have the 8th house, okay? But either way, even for the early degree placements, it's going to be on the line between the 7th and 8th, so the manifestation could be in either way. Now for details about what that means, the 8th house has a lot of extra connotations beyond the energy of just relationships, so it's important for you to use the resources that I've created. So what I've done is I've created a video called Eclipses in 8th house or Scorpio. So if you go to AnnieHelpsYouTV.com or just Annie Botticelli YouTube, go to my homepage. I have the Eclipse video series as a playlist, and you can find it in there. Or you can search for Annie Botticelli Eclipse in 8th house. Okay, and it should come up that way. So early degree friends, I suggest that you watch that video because it goes through all of the ways that I've seen eclipses manifest in the 8th house. And there are a lot. That's an intense one. So definitely check that out. For early, middle, and late, watch the one that's called Eclipses in 7th or Libra. And again, you search for Annie Botticelli, Eclipse in 7th, find the video, and it goes into a lot of more information. I'm giving you general saying partnerships, relationships, but there are a lot of subtle nuances about how this tends to manifest, and I go into all of that in that eclipse video. Okay, so now you know where the general idea of where that's going to hit. Now you have resources of how you can go deeper into it. So I create resources with the intention to help you align with the natural rhythms of the universe. And now I've written a book called Planetology, How to Align with the Natural Rhythms of the Universe. It's published through Watkins Media in the UK, and our distribution partner for ensuring worldwide distribution is Penguin Random House. You can see more about the book, which is being called a landmark book, focusing on how to align with the rhythms by looking at the personal planets. And so you can look at my Random House author, Penguin Random House author page. So if you just search for Annie Botticelli Planetology, you will find that. You can buy it on Amazon. You can order it through bookstores. There are different international venues. I've heard of people pre-ordering it to get, so that as soon as it comes out, you will have, you'll have it. And it's got practices and projects and things to take you up with your energetic understanding and flow, and to help you to heal and use the planetary aspects to live in more sync with the universe, okay? So if you would like to learn astrology, then definitely you will love my course. If you think I go into details in these horoscope videos, wait till you see what I do in that course. You can go to BeAstroPro, BeAstro pro.com. All the links that I'm giving you are also in the notes underneath the video. Or you can go to Loom Life, Lume, luminouslifelife.com. That's my school, Luminous Life Multiversity. And you can see all of my courses there to help you get your business online, to help you be a coach, to help you become an astrologer. I also have tons of free courses that are either in development or already available. So you can get into those free courses. It's free to join the school. And including claiming victory over viruses, to help people understand the relationship between viruses and autoimmune disease and certain cancers, and how to keep wellness in the chronic viral experience and in the pandemic viral experience. So if you want to have written horoscopes by me, you can go to cozybysweetstarlight.com and other Astrology Kissed blogs. And there are a ton of blogs on astrology and other things at anniehelpsyou.com, which is my main site. So I hope, my Saggy friends, that you have a wonderful month, and I'll see you next month. Bye.